Thank you, Ashley. Good morning. This meeting of the board is a hybrid physical virtual meeting. I'd like to welcome those in the boardroom with me today and those who are joining us virtually. While keeping your microphone muted, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I will ask the secretary to the board to address a few technical and protocol items.
We have a quorum. The full board is present for this meeting. Chairman Hall and Board Member Smith. Please ensure that you have silenced any mobile devices you have with you. The virtual portion of this hybrid meeting is on Cisco WebEx. We have two OIT staff, Ben Rana and Victor Amaya, monitoring and managing the meeting. They will be locking this meeting and no new connections will be allowed. OIT will be advancing the slides, so you will hear presenters say, "Next slide." If you lose connectivity in this meeting, please contact Victor Amaya. Lastly, this meeting is being recorded. The video recording of the open portion of this meeting will be posted for public viewing for a limited period of time. Chairman Hall, that concludes the technical and protocol items. We're ready to continue when you are.
Secretary will read an opening statement for the Government and Sunshine Act.
This is an open Farm Credit Administration board meeting under the Government and the Sunshine Act. If anyone raises a subject that may be discussed in closed session as permitted by the Government and the Sunshine Act, Chairman Hall will entertain a motion to close the meeting.
We will now review the published meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as published?
There is, Mr. Chairman. I move to adopt the agenda as published.
I second the motion. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the secretary will record the vote on this motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we will consider whether any portions of the meeting should be closed to the public.
The agenda does not include items that we should properly discuss in closed session. I move that the entire meeting remain open.
And I second the motion. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the secretary will record the vote on this motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. This motion carries. Please turn to tab 1. The next item is the approval of the minutes as presented behind tab 1.
I move to approve the minutes for the December 11th, 2025 regular board meeting as presented.
I second that motion. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the secretary will record the vote on the motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Turn to tab 2, please. And at this time, I'll ask Jerry Versace to present a report on the Integrated Technology Plan, and this will be an information item.
Good morning, Chairman Hall, Board Member Smith, and Happy New Year. My name is Jerry Versace. I am the Chief Information Officer and the Director of the Office of Information Technology. And today I'd like to provide a report on FCA's new Integrated Technology Plan. Next slide, please. The agenda for this briefing, it will start off with a bit of background on how we got to the point we're at today, an overview of the Integrated Technology Plan, and further discussion of some of our initiatives for this year, such as our technology modernization surge and our efforts with things like cloud adoption and artificial intelligence. So as you know, due to retirements, we've had significant leadership changes in OIT in the past 18 months. After becoming the acting CIO, OIT began a significant reprioritization of our efforts to focus on our improvements to our technology environment, as well as delivering on projects that had been in the pipeline. By the end of 2024, we were able to accomplish several of those efforts. First, we implemented the first phase of mobile access, enabling staff to access on-premise applications through their FCA mobile devices. We also rolled out a new version of our consolidated reporting system, which enables more efficient data transfer with the Farm Credit system. We also, by the end of 2025, we were able to refresh staff's end user equipment, such as laptops, and we enhanced our network resiliency and connectivity in the face of some outages we had been experiencing from our internet service providers. So while these were significant accomplishments, it did highlight the need for us to have a longer-term vision for our technology capabilities here at FCA, and that led to the development of the Integrated Technology Plan. So the Integrated Technology Plan itself is a re-engineering of both how we identify and select projects, and then how we implement those new capabilities. The first phase, which is currently underway, is to develop our technology foundation, which includes platforms such as artificial intelligence and new cloud environments. These platforms will provide the framework for developing and deploying future efforts. Simultaneously, FCA is establishing new ways to solicit and evaluate innovative ideas for future implementation. Once we've established these effort elements, the next phase includes collecting, evaluating, and prioritizing project proposals with a focus on applicability to our mission, technical feasibility, and expected return on investment. So to execute on this plan, we've made some changes to OIT's organization and identified some priority hires to support these platforms. First, we created a new group, the Computing Platforms Division, which will focus on the technologies that will form the foundation of these efforts. And to further our ability to execute, we are moving forward with 3 priority hires this fiscal year. As you can see from the chart in the lower right, OIT staffing levels have dropped from 36 at the end of FY23 to 28 today. A key part of the plan is not directly replacing these resources, but rather strategically hiring people with experience in relevant technology areas for newly established roles, including cloud, identity, and data architecture. So another key aspect of the initial phases of this plan is FCA's technology modernization surge. This effort is providing dedicated resources to build out the previously discussed platforms, modernize our infrastructure and equipment, and bring in outside expertise to assist in deploying a robust footing for future development. The projects moving forward as part of this surge were selected due to their clear business case for FCA's mission and minimal ongoing operational cost, such as the need for continual contractor support. In the next slides, I'll be presenting an overview of some of these efforts that are supported by the surge. So we have grouped our major FY26 initiatives into 5 major categories: accelerating innovation, adopting cloud capabilities, artificial intelligence, improving our data transfer capabilities with the Farm Credit System and external organizations, and cybersecurity. And I'll detail each of those in the next slides. So, as previously mentioned, a major part of our integrated technology plan is to implement new ways to solicit innovative ideas. In late 2025, a joint initiative with the Office of Examination, the Office of Data Analytics and Economics, and OIT was implemented, called FCA Labs. FCA Labs is a process and platform to engage staff and solicit innovative ideas for potential implementation. FCA Labs has already generated 20 proposals, some of which have been selected and are in the process of implementation. So FCA Labs does not require that proposed solutions or identified challenges have a technological solution, but as you can imagine, with a rapidly advancing pace of technology, most of them are. In addition to FCA Labs, we continue to source new projects from management, technical subject matter experts, and other federal agencies that are experiencing similar challenges. And to evaluate and prioritize those ideas, we are establishing a new data and technology planning group. So in the past, each FCA office has provided their own prioritized list of desired improvements for implementation. While this approach resulted in a solid list of proposed efforts, our evaluation process was missing enterprise context for all but the largest investments. To address this, the Data and Technology Planning Group will include representatives from all FCA offices. Chaired by myself and the Chief Data Officer, this team will carefully evaluate the proposals against a variety of criteria, including budget, feasibility, return on investment, and risk. The chart on the right is a high-level rubric for how we evaluate projects. The vertical axis, readiness, encompasses multiple factors that will help us judge FCA's ability to successfully deploy a solution. For example, a new but unproven technology may not yet be ready for use in a mission-essential function. Alternatively, the technology might be mature, but FCA may have additional work to do before we are ready to move forward with its implementation. The horizontal axis is for value, as mission alignment and greater returns on our technology investments are higher priority. An example of how this can be applied is artificial intelligence. Some types of AI, such as machine learning and chatbots, are mature enough to become an integral part of our technology stack, with clear value to our mission. Others, such as agentic AI, are relatively new and still being refined. We will continue to monitor industry progress on the latter, specifically looking for demonstrated high-value use cases that we can apply at FCA. Once the group has recommended solutions for FCA to pursue, it will rank, prioritize, and communicate them to the board so that the implementation priorities are clear. The next major initiative is cloud adoption. So FCA has been pursuing cloud-first solutions for several years at this point, as many of the new technologies that are becoming available are either cloud exclusive or beyond FCA's resources to implement in-house. Cloud-based solutions can also come with a reduced variability in our budget by shifting technology maintenance costs from large periodic capital expenditures to consistent operational costs. For this initiative, we are focusing on cloud platforms in 4 key areas that you can see on the right. Artificial intelligence to enhance productivity, data analytics capabilities to better use our data sources, mobile access to enable our traveling staff to be more engaged while on the road, and modernized workflow automation that minimizes manual efforts and processes. So some of the specific cloud activities that we are pursuing in FY26 are establishing the various cloud platforms that we will need to take advantage of these new technologies. Some of them are brand new capabilities, such as artificial intelligence. Others are migrating existing on-premise workloads to more efficient cloud deployments. We have termed many of these efforts as FCA Anywhere. This name reflects our goal of providing secure, ubiquitous access to our technology solutions. Our workforce, especially our examination staff, travel frequently. Having seamless access to FCA's workflows, data, and content will further enhance our ability to efficiently support our mission. We've already made significant progress in this area, providing mobile access to our enterprise document management system, as well as the systems that directly support examination activities. So, as I'm sure you've heard, AI is the hottest area in technology, and FCA is making significant progress on applying this new capability to our work. However, to do so responsibly, there has to be a framework that helps guide our implementation. Our approach has 2 core tenets. First, identifying and addressing the risks that come along with AI. And second, including human review of all AI-assisted work product to ensure its accuracy. We have selected a 2-prong approach to implementing AI capabilities. The first is for general productivity, including general chatbots, AI-assisted search, and summarization of content. The second is specialized use cases, where FCA will customize models with specific mission for specific mission and support activities. The implementation of AI at FCA is a cross-office effort. We are currently executing multiple pilot programs for AI with participants throughout the agency to help us identify the best use cases for these capabilities and where staff training will be required to get the most out of our investment. We will be deploying the first tranche of AI tools agency-wide in the coming months. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the more specific use cases that we are pursuing with AI. So we have several selected use cases that are in flight. First, in the general productivity category, we are implementing tools to support general research and summarization, as well as assistance in improving human-written documentation and communication materials. Next, for our direct support of our examination function, we are working on highly specialized models for data and information retrieval and data visualizations. Lastly, we are also taking advantage of AI functions that are embedded in some of the tools that we already possess. This includes in developing and delivering staff training and improvements to cybersecurity controls that leverage AI as a force multiplier for our security operations staff. Next, we are working on several projects to enhance our technological communication with the Farm Credit System and other external entities. Our new CRS system has been well received, and it significantly reduces the burden and manual processing of data on both sides. We are building on this success by pursuing its application to other data sources and reporting needs. Some of these will be rolled out in the coming months. Additionally, we are in the early stages of identifying improvements to our portal to improve our ability to both send and receive large unstructured data files with external organizations, with a focus on making the system easier to use and maintaining security. And last, but certainly not least, we are working on projects in cybersecurity. As you know, our program has been consistently rated effective in our annual audits, but the threat landscape is constantly changing. We need to be vigilant to identify emerging threats and implement or modify controls to address them. To that end, we are ensuring our new cloud platforms are appropriately secured, that our vulnerability management program encompasses our new tools and capabilities. We're increasing the frequency and depth of our penetration testing program to identify and resolve potential issues before they are exploited. And lastly, we are working on applying artificial intelligence tools to enhance our security program. This concludes my presentation, but if you would indulge me, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude to the board and to my fellow office directors for their support in my role. And I'd also like to thank the staff of OIT. Even with the many changes we've implemented, they have continued to display an incredible flexibility and dedication to both their work and FCA's mission. With their efforts, I have no doubt that we will be successful as we move forward with implementing this new plan. And for that, I'm sincerely grateful. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, Mr. Chairman, but a number of exciting initiatives in front of the agency, Jerry. So we thank you for being creative and looking ahead on that and responding to staff and the labs and the initiatives they put in front of you. I think a big part of the success will depend on the success of the priority hires that's in front of you, as we talked about in our briefing. And I guess the one thing I'd emphasize is not only look at those technical abilities, but also those communication skills and those skills needed to collaborate with the other offices, communicate with those other offices successfully in IT support function. So no, best of success with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. You know, Jerry, I've expressed my frustration. It's just like technology has a different language, and especially now with all the new advancements with AI, all of these things, and it's just sort of trying to get a better understanding of how it affects our job here and doing our job. And a couple examples you've shared is just data transfer between the system, Farmer Mac, making that more. It just doesn't benefit us. It benefits them in terms of the transfer, providing information. And I just think there's just so many benefits, especially with emerging technology. So I want to thank you for that. But I also want to point out it's just not in terms of ODAE sharing data at IT. It's an agency-wide initiative. I mean, there's going to be things in OAS that Vonda can benefit from. I know Mary's looking for things in the OCFO's office. So I'm encouraging sort of everybody in the agency to sort of look at how these things can work as tools to do a more efficient and effective job going forward. And I do thank you and your staff, because you've done a really good job, and we appreciate all those efforts. So thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
So for no further questions, we're going to turn to tab 3, and I'm going to ask Vanya Suin and Heather Lepresti to present the notice of proposed rulemaking, permanent capital, proposed rule, and other capital related revisions. This will be an action item. Vanya.
Good morning, Chairman Hall and Board Member Smith. Thank you for having me. My name is Vanya Shen. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst of the Finance and Capital Markets team in the Office of Regulatory Policy. And with me today will also be Heather Lepresti, Senior Counsel in the Office of General Counsel, and we'll be presenting together. Before we start, we would like to recognize several individuals and offices for their contributions to this project. ORP Associate Director Ryan Leist, Senior Policy Analysts Corbin West, Christopher Wilson, and Shara Pollard, Assistant General Counsel Jennifer Cohn, and members of the FCA Capital Work Group, which are from the Farm Credit System Insurance Corporation, or FCIC, and the Office of Examination. The matter before the FCA board today is whether it should approve and issue a proposed rule that would amend the permanent capital regulations and related regulations. This rule would reduce the burden of calculating permanent capital for Farm Credit System banks and associations. It would also minimize confusion about FCA's reliance on permanent capital when evaluating the safety and soundness of system institutions. I will provide a brief background on what led to this proposed rule. Effective January 1st, 2017, FCA replaced its 1997 regulatory core surplus, total surplus capital requirements applicable to system institutions with the Tier 1, Tier 2 capital requirements, which are housed under Part 628 of our regulations. At that time, FCA shifted its focus away from permanent capital as a measure of the quantity and quality of system institution capital. This regulatory update made FCA's capital rules more similar to the international Basel capital framework and to the U.S. banking regulators. Since the adoption of the 2017 capital rule, staff has considered ways to reduce the burden of calculating permanent capital and also to minimize any public confusion about its use when evaluating the safety and soundness of system institutions. In this process, we had to consider that FCA is required by statute to maintain minimum permanent capital standards. The Farm Credit Act requires specific components in the numerator of the permanent capital ratio, and we cannot change those. However, FCA does have the authority to modify the denominator of the permanent capital ratio, which is the assets component of that ratio. In 2020, as part of a different proposed rule, FCA asked the public to comment on how FCA could clarify our permanent capital regulations, consistent with the statute, and make compliance with these requirements less burdensome. In response to our questions, the Farm Credit Council submitted a letter on behalf of its member system institutions that supported two efforts. One, to minimize the use of the term permanent capital, and two, reduce the calculations and reporting associated with its use. This letter stated that the use of permanent capital can often be confusing, it detracts from Basel comparability, and is burdensome. The letter also supported aligning the calculations of permanent capital with those of total capital to the extent possible. This letter also requested that we eliminate the permanent capital reporting requirements from published financial reports. This proposed rule would address to these Farm Credit Council comments in three ways. There's a fourth set of changes as well, in which the proposed rule would clarify requirements, correct errors, and remove obsolete definitions and requirements related to capital. We will now discuss these changes. First, the proposed rule would revise regulations referring to permanent capital that are outside our permanent capital requirements in Part 615 subpart H and Part 628 to instead refer to the Tier 1, Tier 2 capital measures under Part 628. The proposed rule would make these changes in the following sections. First, in the preliminary exit fee estimate and final exit fee calculation in Part 611. Second, the lending and leasing limit violations in Part 614. Third, retirement of other equities in Part 615. And four, grounds for appointing FCA as conservator or receiver in Part 627. The second set of proposed changes would be to simplify the permanent capital ratio calculation. Part 615 subpart H and Part 628 would be revised to make the permanent capital ratio denominator the same as the denominator of the total capital ratio in Part 628. As mentioned earlier, the agency is required by statute to retain the permanent capital calculations in the numerator of the ratio, but there's no legal restriction on changing the calculations to assets in the denominator. By making the denominator calculations the same, the agency would reduce the regulatory burden in calculating the permanent capital ratio. This change responds to the system comment letter to align the calculations of permanent capital with those of total capital to the extent possible. In addition, the The proposed rule would align counting of assets in connection with loss sharing agreements for permanent capital with the way they're accounted in Tier 1, Tier 2 capital. Thank you for your attention so far. I will now pass it to Heather to discuss other proposed changes.
Good morning, Chairman Hall and Board Member Smith. As Ms. Schwen mentioned, I'm Heather Lopresti from the Office of General Counsel. The third set of revisions in this proposed rule would revise regulations in Part 620 and 630 to eliminate the requirement for system institutions to disclose their permanent capital ratio in reports to shareholders and investors. A new provision would also be added to Part 620, requiring an institution that chooses to disclose permanent capital in its annual report, even though such disclosure would no longer be required, to include a statement that FCA uses Part 628 capital ratios to evaluate whether an institution has an adequate amount of total capital, including sufficient high-quality capital, to operate safely and soundly. The fourth set of changes in the proposed rule would revise other regulations in 5 different areas to clarify requirements, correct errors, and remove obsolete definitions related to capital. These changes include, first, revise Part 607 to base the assessment of system institutions on the total capital ratio denominator instead of on the permanent capital ratio denominator. Second, clarify that the export financing requirement in Part 613 is based on total capital. Third, clarify that purchase and sale of interest in loans in Part 614 is based on total capital. 4, delete certain definitions in Part 615 that are no longer used. And lastly, in Part 620, which are the contents of the annual report to shareholders, the proposed rule would remove obsolete requirements to disclose core surplus, total surplus, and net collateral ratios, which were required to be reported for historical purposes only through 2021. This concludes our summary of the proposed rule. But prior to presenting this proposed rule for FCA board consideration and in compliance with Executive Order 14215, we submitted this proposed rule to the Office of Management and Budget, Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, referred to as OIRA. OIRA is responsible for identifying regulatory actions subject to interagency review under Executive Order 12866. They determined that this proposed rule is not a significant regulatory action. In addition, this rule, if finalized as proposed, is expected to be an Executive Order 14192 deregulatory action. This concludes our presentation. We would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Heather. Board Member Smith, questions for Vanya or Heather?
No questions. Thank you for the presentation.
No, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'm glad you pointed out the review from OIRA, and it is a deregulatory action, so we appreciate that. Since there are no more questions, I'm going to ask you to provide a recommendation to the board for consideration.
Staff recommends that the Farm Credit Administration Board adopt the following resolution. The Farm Credit Administration FCA Board hereby approves the attached proposed rule that would amend permanent capital FCA regulations and make other updates to capital-related regulations. The FCA Board authorizes staff to make any changes requested by the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs or any technical or grammatical changes that may be necessary prior to publication in the Federal Register.
After receiving the staff's recommendation, is there a motion from the board on the recommendation?
There is. I move to approve the staff's recommendation regarding notice of proposed rulemaking, permanent capital proposed rule, and other capital-related revisions.
Second the motion. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the secretary will record the vote on the motion.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Hall.
Aye. Motion carries. Please turn to the adjournment tab. Thank you, Heather and Vanya, for the presentation. There are no further business to bring before the board. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second the motion. The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the secretary will record the vote on the motion.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Hall.
Aye. Motion carries and the meeting is adjourned.